One of the many mottos my mom drilled into our heads when we were growing up is the more the merrier. Come one, come all. There's always room for one more. Make room on the couch. Pull up a chair. Open all the doors. Very inclusive, loving way of life. And I benefited greatly from that. But Priya Parker would beg to differ on that inclusive philosophy. In fact, the third chapter of her book, The Art of Gathering, is called Closed Doors, Not Open Doors. It's all about the importance of being exclusive. If we're looking for mottos here, her motto might be more like the old playground chant, "Tick-tock, the game's locked, no one else can play." Welcome to the Family Lab podcast, where we investigate all things parenting and home management. I'm your host, Whitney Archibald, a mother of 5 kids, ages 9 to 19. Today's episode is the second in a 3-part series. We're discussing the book, The Art of Gathering by Priya Parker. So if you want to catch the first one before you listen to this one, you can. It also can stand alone if you want. But the first episode is in our show notes. You can go there and listen there first. That was covered in the introduction in chapter 1. This episode is going to cover chapters 2 through 4. And then our next episode, airing March 11th, is going to cover chapters 5 through 8. The part of the book we're going to discuss today introduces several controversial ideas. The first one being this idea of exclusivity. The second is the idea that you should not be a chill host, maybe even a little bossy. It's time to set some ground rules and invite people into your kingdom. Joining me today is Angela Halliday, who is my regular co-host for these book club episodes. Angela has 5 children also, ages 17 to 31, so she's kind of in the next stage, almost an empty nester. We also have another guest today, my friend Emily Bean, who happens to also have 5 kids. I didn't really do that on purpose. It just happened that way, but kind of interesting. So she's in the earlier stage. Her kids are ages 1 to 11. So the reason I invited Emily is that she is the most inclusive person I know, which may sound ironic to talk about exclusivity, but you'll get the picture. It's not as harsh as it sounds. Anyway, Emily moved into my neighborhood about 1.5 years ago, had a baby almost right away, and within just a couple months after that, I received an invitation to a get-together, a party at her house. I was kind of amazed that she was hosting after having a baby and just being so new. I expected maybe a handful of people there. No. So I walk in and there's at least 20 people, maybe more, milling around, eating food, getting to know each other. And I expected also that there would be a lot of people I knew from church. And there were some, but there were also people that Emily had met at the park, just randomly at play dates. She invited a lot of her other neighbors, even her son's kindergarten teacher. There were just so many people there from all different places, and Emily had just gathered them all in. So who better to talk to about a book called The Art of Gathering? We're going to jump right into our conversation where we're talking about this party of Emily's. What amazed me was how many people she already knew, having been so new here. We all grabbed a plate of goodies from the table and then just milled around, and I sat down in a chair next to her son's kindergarten teacher, maybe. Yeah. Her kindergarten teacher.
Cool. Someone ever comes in.
I know. I never think about that's terrible, but I never think of inviting my kids' teachers to things, even when I really like them. It's but Emily just makes friends wherever she goes. And anyway, it was a house full of people and she had just moved in. So it's a talent, a natural talent probably that Emily has.
Maybe to be with people.
Yeah.
It's
There's something to be said about that's how you make friends.
Yeah.
You gather them.
Yeah.
You include them in your circle or whatever. So I think there's something to be said for that. And, from just a morality standpoint, I think we're here to help each other.
Right.
And so we reach out to each other. And that's why our inclusivity or whatever is important to us.
Yeah.
I totally get her idea of exclusivity. But the idea that we want to welcome everyone because everybody's valued, I think that's where we're coming from. Right.
And that may be the purpose of that event.
Exactly.
Emily you were probably trying to just get to know lots of people.
Yes, I was trying to
Moving in fresh.
make
So
everyone friends.
everybody come.
Yeah,
and
I love
and
that.
it worked.
I
And
love that.
lots of people, and we made new connections.
Yeah.
And well, okay, it wasn't just the teacher, it was people she had just met randomly at the park. It was like all her neighbors, like people she had met
We
at
just barely met.
yeah.
Just barely. That's what I'm learning about.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, it was just awesome, and so I just knew that Emily was a gatherer, and that it is interesting because some people have that as a
Natural.
gift, as you know,
Natural.
like that's one of your strengths. But it is also a skill that can be learned, which is
Totally.
why it's good
Why
to
we
have
have the
books. Yeah.
I feel like the more that you gather with people, the easier it becomes. I noticed, like, during COVID, when we didn't have anybody over, it was so much harder to start having people over for dinner and planning events.
Yeah.
I forgot how to interact with people, and it was harder. And after having babies and not having people over for a little bit, I feel like it's a muscle that you can strengthen too, gathering people and planning things.
Yeah, no. So I think it's again tied to the purpose. Like that was your purpose, was to meet people, to build a community. And so that's a time when maybe you don't have this exclusivity.
I think she wants us to realize that the list of invitees has to go to the purpose. If we're not meeting the purpose and caring about the other people and the experience they're going to have, because there's lots of reasons why certain people maybe shouldn't come. And that's not saying I completely agree with this premise.
Yeah.
But the idea that we have to close things in order to make the event sparkle and zing like we talked about last time.
Yeah.
So that's her idea. And she talks about it not just exclusive guest list, but exclusive the space you're in and what you do. And she goes, it was a lot bigger than just the guest list, which has surprised me actually.
So let's start with the guest list. Why did that kind of make you guys squirm?
I just feel like when people come into my home, I want people to feel welcome, and I hate being like, oh, well, if she sees the invitation on her fridge, then she's gonna feel bad, or like, oh, she didn't get the Christmas card, or or she's gonna talk to her friend about it, or she's with a friend, I can't send her the text to invite her because she will see it. But I think in actuality, most people are not offended when they hear of someone else getting invited to things. I mean, when I hear that someone I know got invited to a great party, I'm like, oh, that's so great. I'm so glad that I'm glad they have those friendships. I'm glad they have the opportunity for that. And so I feel like I agree with the exclusion thing with some crowds and for some events, but for others it gets tricky.
Agree.
I wonder if we can just come up with some other examples of times when you don't want to be exclusive first, and then we can kind of narrow it down to what times when you want to be exclusive. So for me, that was park days when I had young kids was a great way to be very inclusive because it's a venue that's big and expansive, and the more the merrier at that kind of an activity. And it's neutral territory. The parents can talk, the kids can play. It's pretty great that way. So I always find that's a really good kind of opening meeting place. And so there were lots of times when I had weekly park day and I would just invite anybody and everybody, or like even if I didn't organize it, I'd just say like, hey, a bunch of us are meeting at the park. Come join. And that's an easy, inclusive event. What are some other things like that for you guys?
We host youth nights at our house now that my husband has an assignment at church that is his job to invite the youth, and we always open it to whoever wants to come. With caveats, though, like we don't want the parents to come. We don't want all the other leaders of the group.
Right. So there are some
So
exclusions.
there are some, but invite all your friends.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I love that.
So and age exclusion.
Age is probably it. So I mean, when you think of it that way, certain activities just lend themselves better to certain people. Clearly, there's just activities that wouldn't be fun for some people. So the more I think about it, the more I think her philosophy really is pretty great. She gave some examples in the book of when she thought that exclusivity was really important, like their workout group that wasn't really just for working out. It was their friendship group when they talked and everything. And then somebody wanted to have a sub come, and then that messes up the whole
Just the dynamic.
Yeah.
Dynamic.
It's just totally
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
Which I have been thinking about it, and I get that, but sometimes we make sacrifices just because somebody else needs something. You know,
Right.
we care about other people's needs maybe more than our own, and to a certain extent, obviously, that's, I think, generally a really good way to go.
Yeah, because sometimes you invite somebody because it
Yeah.
would be good for them.
Right,
Maybe it's
exactly.
not good for the whole
group,
group, but the whole
Or
group can
they
be
can-
fine.
they can
Yeah.
figure it out.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
And that she qualifies it by generous exclusivity.
Generous exclusivity.
And
That's
that,
right.
That
We're
really
trying to
does.
protect the people that are there too,
Yes.
right?
That's
In
what
all
she-
the ways, emotionally, physically, everything, right?
Yeah.
Socially.
I have a good example of that. My friend Molly she was in this group of friends. They did like a lunch group. It was just a really social group when she lived in Wyoming, and a couple of the women organized a girls trip, and a lot of their other things were like the more the merrier, park days, things like that. And so she just thought, oh, everybody's invited. But she had been specifically invited. And so she was talking about it with everybody. Like, are you coming? Are
Yeah.
you coming? Are you coming? And she went back to the organizers and said, well, we were kind of thinking it was just like the six of us because logistically it's a little bit tricky,
Yeah.
something like that. And
Yeah.
she was like, oh gosh,
Oh yeah.
I should have
I
realized
guess that makes
like,
sense.
oh, and then
Yeah.
and then she talked to somebody who she assumed had been invited who hadn't been because she just thought it was this open invitation. It got
And
all
then we
messy.
hurt people's feelings.
Right, and she asked her to
Yeah.
watch. She just assumed she had chosen not to go and asked her to watch her kids while she was there. And she's like, the girls' trip. And so, no, I don't know.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's where it gets tricky, is the like hurt feelings when somebody finds out and would like to be included, and you just So it's
I don't know.
hard.
Erring on generosity, though, I think is a safe way to go, unless something specific kind of comes up. One of her other examples, I completely disagreed with the way they handled it. Even they were in a program together, and two of them wanted to bring their significant others.
Yeah.
To me, that felt a little bit harsh.
Yeah, because she thought it would dilute. She thought it would dilute the group, and like the person would be worried about the comfort of the person with them instead of just being zeroed in.
People wouldn't act the same. But there's that new person.
Yeah, I get that. But you think about it, the one was like shipping out the next day or something, and this was their only weekend together. So do you want the friend
or do you
do
care
not
about
want the
their
friend?
Yeah. Well,
So,
and sometimes, we read people differently too. Like sometimes to come at all, somebody who is more introverted might need to bring somebody,
That's true.
or
That's true.
there's different personality types to think about too when we're thinking about this. So yeah, it's definitely not cut and dry.
It's an art, like she says.
Yeah, it is an art. And so moving on to some of the more exclusive things, like things, especially when we're talking about like inviting people to our homes or into
meals.
meals,
You can't just have anybody because you
need to
gotta
know.
have enough food.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
And places at the table when
Yeah.
All the things.
Well, I feel like one way that it helps, I think it helps a lot when people RSVP. And I know that's kind of an archaic thing these days, but when I say,
respect that.
right,
RSVP.
right. We did a popsicle party at the park when we first moved in because we wanted to get to know the kids in my kids' classes. So we just put little notes and they passed them around to all their friends.
She's so good.
Well, I'm like, okay, I can get 20-cent popsicles at the store, and then all the friends will come. And we had done this in a different place where we lived, and there were like 4 kids there. And then we did it here, and this is 4 kids, each with 15 to 20 kids in their class. And I think there were like 50 kids in the park. But most of them had RSVP'd, so I knew. And so I had enough popsicles, and I was able to tell the parents the guest list, which I think also helps with the exclusivity thing.
That's true.
To say, hey, so the whole class is invited, and then if they say, oh, is my little other son okay to come too? I'm like, yeah, there's going to be kindergartners there with my other son's class, so it's fine. Just bring all your kids. And then with like having people over for dinner or to parties, sometimes I'll even send out like a, hey, we're having you, just so you know, we're also having the Wilkersons and the Archibalds over for dinner too, just so they can be aware, because I feel like it helps knowing how much food to bring, and also it just helps with the dynamics of like the kids knowing that their buddies are going to be there, and
So I think it helps adults
right
to prepare for. We got invited to something tomorrow night, And we didn't know quite what to expect. We thought it was going to be a giant group.
Okay.
And then I got a text last night that it's like 4 families.
Okay.
And I think it helps prepare even my teenage son and my husband and myself what to do.
Yeah. So like publicizing
it kind of
among the guests, I think it's really, really helpful.
I think it is too.
Yeah. And we will talk about some of the rules at an event, and that kind of helps establish some unspoken rules too. If you know kind of what to expect and what type of a party is it in this chapter of exclusivity, she gives guidelines for numbers of people. So she says like a group of 6 is kind of this up to 6 is an intimate group. 12 to 15 is a great size for you can still have one conversation at that level. It's more of a party, a bigger event. I don't remember exactly what she said about that.
It's to build trust and intimacy, and for a single moderator. But then when it goes beyond that, you have to
by 30
one table. It's a one table group or not a one table.
Yeah. So she gives kind of different guidelines for that, which was helpful. I thought.
I think we figure it out as we do it, but it would sure help if we thought about this ahead of time before we realized, I got in over my head on this activity or this event.
Well, and it's just not the type of event I was planning for.
Exactly.
And it's just helpful to know.
Right. And there are different things that you do with different size groups and things like that. But, some of my favorite parties are where it's just is that intimate 6.
It's true.
And you really all get to know each other really well. And it's, or, once it gets to the 30 party size, you're like, okay, I'm in for a night of small talk.
Right.
Often,
It's not going to be deep.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. And sometimes that's
that's okay too.
Yeah. Sometimes you want a party vibe, and especially, when you're celebrating something or, so, but it was nice to have those guidelines. I was like, that is very true. So one place where it's really important to be exclusive, and I've done this with, I think, all of my kids. I've done preschool co-ops or play groups.
Or babysitting co-ops. Yeah, we've had that before too.
Yeah.
You want to protect the rest of the group from, like, there are certain people that shouldn't be in there. And I don't mean that as harsh as it sounds. But we need to all be comfortable with who's watching our kids. I mean, that matters.
I know.
Yeah. So
that has to be really
that's a
exclusive.
top priority. Yeah, that's a top priority.
Yeah, and so you have to find people you're comfortable with, and if there are ways to get to, if somebody's like, I really think you guys will like this person and we should do it, then there are ways to do it. Like you can do start at the park and not even say this is an audition for a play group, you can have a soft audition and see how the kids get along and just see if you vibe, see if you have the similar values. Sometimes it's a matter of even similar safety standards.
Exactly. I was thinking that, like, guns in the home and how they're taken care of, or what kind of media you're allowing to be in your home. And, different people have different rules and different emphasis on how important that is to them too. Yeah. I mean, those are important, especially when raising kids.
And sometimes it's even the goals of it, again, going back to purpose. Like, some people want their 3-year-olds to have a play group that's educational. I don't care about that. I just want them to play. But some people do, and that's totally fine if you're not judging.
But we all have different expectations and different ways we want to spend our time too.
Right.
I think that's the other thing. Some of us like to multitask, and it needs to fit several different boxes. If we're going to get together for this, it needs to do this. And maybe that's not what she wants us to do. I live my life in, how many boxes can this tick off sometimes? So I don't know. Each of us have different needs.
Yeah. So. Yeah. One time particularly, one of the first playgroups, when I was in playgroup newbie, I'm like, okay, this group got together and they're like, we're going to have a meeting to see who wants to do a playgroup for our 3-year-olds. I think it was 3. And I had a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old at the time. And so I'm like, yay, I get to be in this scene, I'd waited all this time, infertility, had babies. I'd seen all these moms getting together for playgroups. I was all excited. And I was like, yes, this is going to be my social time. I'm in toddler babyland. Well, a lot of my friends, especially since it took us longer to be able to have kids, these were their 3rd, 4th kids. they were looking for a drop-off preschool where they could like have somebody watch their kid, take turns and take their turn with all the kids, but they wanted like some peace and be able to run errands and make appointments and stuff like that. I wanted social because I was like in babyland and I was so excited for
needed somebody to talk to.
Yeah, and it actually panned out beautifully because there were too many of us. Like that's another limitation was the number of kids,
and just to be organized enough to keep it running.
Yeah. And we found like 6 was max, but like 4 was even better for a play group for 3-year-olds. We bumped it up to...
We had 5 in my first daughters. Like they were 18 months to about 3, and there were 5 of us. We rotated every week, and worked out great. But we didn't invite other people to it because you had them every 5 weeks. Everybody planned their doctor's appointments around us. Everything. So there are reasons.
Yeah. And so we had 2 groups. We just split into 2 groups. Cool. We had a big group to start where we had just felt everybody's purpose out. It was actually probably really textbook what she would have instructed us to do.
Look at you.
Yeah. It wasn't me. I wasn't in charge. I was just a newbie like, what is this thing? Anyway, so we had one group that was drop off and one group that was stay. And it was like my first like after that, I called them board meetings, like my parenting board meetings. And I would just ask all my questions. And they were usually a little bit more seasoned moms than me. And I was like, save all my questions for the board meeting. And we
love that you named it too. I have several groups that we call ourselves different names. It's not that we're trying to be exclusive. It's just that's what the purpose of our getting together is. Shout out to all my people. With all the different little groups. And
we need to hear some of
the names.
We have the summit. We like to hike together, but we also would have these really long meetings because we work together in a youth program in our church, and we still meet, and we're still called the summit. So get it.
Awesome.
Hiking and Anyway, my husband actually named us, which is so funny.
I love hiking.
We have the Twisted Sisters, which we did yoga together all the time.
Okay.
It's so great.
And then we have the Blister Sisters, which is the big hiking group. And we're not exclusive on any of them. Okay. I mean, the summit might be a little exclusive to the people who also know us that think we're a little cliquey. We're like, you're welcome to come. Anyway, I think it's interesting. It's fun to belong too. I think that's the other thing. Good. It's a belonging thing, right? A belonging thing.
Yeah.
Too.
You want to feel like you're needed somewhere.
Yeah. So I don't know. I loved it. I thought there was some fun. But then she goes on to like the groups of 30 and the groups of 150. And I was trying to think of what fit into those categories.
Right.
What I hosted.
I definitely haven't hosted anything.
Yeah, I was like
150. But you have weddings.
I have. We've got 2 weddings.
Weddings. Oh yeah.
Weddings and church events
that's true.
That's
true. We've done church.
Yeah. So with our women's group or the whole
Good
congregation,
point.
right?
Yeah.
So I think we have. But it certainly is a completely different dynamic when you're jumping from all those numbers.
Right.
Which I get what she's saying, and it makes sense. I loved her. She also names one Tides of Humanity. And I've never hosted a Tides of Humanity sort of event.
No.
Like a World Cup, Olympic.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole
not
new
me.
category.
Yeah. Yikes.
One of the names we had for one of the groups, we made granola every week, me and a couple friends. So one of my friends named it the Granola Society, which I thought was the most hilarious thing. I mean, we'll still text like my Granola Society. We don't make granola because we all live everywhere else now, but
I love that though.
We would just want to try new recipes.
So like how often would you meet? Granola.
It was like every week. I don't know. We probably did it for like 6 weeks, and then we just played after that because it was too warm in the summer and we didn't want to heat up our kitchens. But we would like bring our granola recipes, chop nuts.
What is that?
I love it.
We all wanted to try it. Oh, it was so fun. But we felt like we belonged because we were like
you
our named group.
Yeah. Did you ever let other people join?
No, it was just when it just became too hard to schedule because we all had little kids and wanted to do it after they were in bed.
Yep.
And so we would share the granola with other people, but we wouldn't make it with other people because the scheduling just got tricky when you have more than 3
I get that.
in a text thread. So
Yeah.
funny name.
It's true. No, I like it. Granola Society. I like
Can't take credit for it. My friend did it.
Great.
I love it.
That's great. So any other examples of just ways that you've gotten together that really worked or ways that you were or were not exclusive?
I hosted a birthday party a couple years ago, and we had some rules, and we'll talk about those a little bit later, but everybody had to bring something, and I had only invited specific people, and I was super excited about it. It ended up going so great. Everybody made friends, and I think it was like 13 people, which is what Priya Parker says is a good number for one conversation. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, okay, well, parties are great. I'll host another one. And so I hosted a game night a couple weeks later, and I thought let's just invite everybody, because I want the people that I was thinking about, I really wanted them to make more friends. And so, or to have the opportunity, they could make them or not, but I wanted them to see other people who are fun. And so I texted the invite to all these people and said, hey, if you want to come, please come, bring a friend. And 4 people came. And that was it. And I think it was because everybody thought somebody else came. The next day, 6 different people were like, how'd it go? It must have been so fun. And everybody thought it was going to be this lively party, but no one felt needed. And so I think that's one thing that exclusivity does, is it makes people feel needed at events. I love that. And people thought everybody else was going, and so we had a good time. The 4 people, we played games and had a good time, but it was a totally different vibe than what I was planning for. Right. And so I think feeling needed also is important. And when people have an invitation and feel like they are one of the people that you really want there, that you reach out to them specifically, feeling needed definitely makes the party a different vibe.
I agree.
Yeah,
I love that.
A tip I got from Jenica Woodbury, who was a guest. I'll include the episode in the show notes. I can't remember the name of the episode right now, but her big suggestion for something like that is to always have a co-host, just involving one other person who has stake in it.
Oh, that's a great
idea. That is a great idea.
And then, it also, maybe expands who you can invite, but it also just, then at least one person's going to show up. Right. She had this heartbreaking story about this whole big luau she planned. And in her backyard with lights, and it was just like sand, and she'd gone all out. It was so sad. It just makes your heart break. But she learned a lot from that, and she's awesome and hosts great events now. And there's a whole episode, you'll love it. But yeah, I thought that was great.
A co-host,
a great tip.
I think a co-host also just assignments, which I think we'll talk about later. Yeah. Their stake in it. When they feel needed, then it's different. People feel like they want to be there. Not that they didn't before, but that they are needed by the host, by the event, even by the other people that are there. So I love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then I think that's what you get when you're doing a play group or an established group. Everybody's taking a turn. Everybody knows this is my time. This is what I'm in charge of. I'm going to make sure
people are
I'm
relying
there for
on
you.
me for it. Yeah. There was one other event I thought of. We used to do teacher appreciation dinners at the end of the school years. And obviously that's a very exclusive list. It's who my kids decided to invite.
Yeah.
But they are some of our favorite memories.
So you, your family?
Just our family.
That's so cool.
And we'd do it in the backyard. Our daughter's senior year, we let her invite 4 or 5. But generally we'd only let them invite one from that year. Well, her senior year, we let her invite, who are the teachers who've meant the most to you? And when you point that out to them, we never had teachers who did not want to come. And we actually started to be getting teachers we have 5 kids. So they knew we did it every year. And so they're like, hoping they made the cut. Hoping they got invited. And we didn't start out trying to be an exclusive group, but it was a way of honoring them. Anyway, we did all sorts of fun things. The invitation was fun. The dinner was fun. We'd have little take-home things for them. We did a little program for them. They'd write poems for their teachers and perform them in front of the group or do little musical numbers. It was such a fun event. And when it got kind of big, we moved to the backyard because we used to have a really small house. And we did in the backyard, prayed for great weather. Anyway, it was one of our favorite traditions as a family.
That's amazing.
The teachers, I can't tell you how appreciative they were. And we were trying to show our appreciation for them.
Yeah.
But they were just in awe that we would take the time to honor a kindergarten teacher or a 3rd grade math teacher or whatever. But they've been amazing experiences. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of work to put together, but my kids were also the co-hosts. So that's another thing of teaching them how to be a host as well.
One of the ones that was completely inclusive that we have hosted over the years, I think we've done it 5 or 6 times. We do the Tour de Taco. And so we invite just everybody we know. and we just send out this Evite with our SVPs. That is the good thing about. I love Evites.
That's so important.
people.
But Evites are great for that because you can both see. You can see the guest list.
Yes.
That's true.
And you can. So I do love Evites for that reason. So we do a big Evite tour to taco, and then we would meet at our house with your bike, and it was adults only, so not completely inclusive, but any adults that we knew, and they could bring friends, whatever, because this was all public access, so we'd then ride all the way to town, which is about 7 miles total there and back. Anyway, so we would ride, and it's mostly downhill there to get to town, and then we'd go to Yolanda's taco shop.
Yay, we love that one.
Amazing.
So we'd eat tacos. We were usually a big group, and so we would just get our tacos and go eat in the park next door. So then we'd eat and then bike back and then have dessert at our house.
That's a great idea.
People would just bring desserts, and so it was super fun, and it was great. But there still was, usually we got a big crowd, but sometimes just there's stuff going on weekends. So there was one time when it was just us and one other couple, but that was a nice one because you could scale it, because we hadn't provided a lot of food. We did desserts, but I always just made one dessert and everybody brought a dessert. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that was an easy one to be inclusive about, and that's been a fun one that we've done over the years. And maybe I think this year we'll be able to bring it back this fall. So you guys are all invited. It's totally inclusive. We'll shut that restaurant down.
It's not that big of a place.
No, it's not.
Also, when it's just dessert, it feels easier to be inclusive. If it's like, my friend said she likes to host things from 2 to 4 and have like an appetizer, like nachos or something, or from 7 to 9, because then it can be just dessert. Mm-hmm. And that feels more attainable if you're just getting into getting excited about having people over. If you just say, hey, we're making nachos, come on over, or we're making, what was the other, chips and salsa or something, like just come over, we're having dessert. That feels really attainable to just, you can have as many people as you want over for cookies.
Yeah.
It makes 36, have 36 people over.
Yeah. And when we first moved in, we just had waffle night every Sunday. I didn't have to make any decisions. It was just, we'd always have waffles. We'd invite a different family every Sunday. And it was, everybody likes waffles, right?
Nice.
And they were gluten-free waffles even.
Okay.
I have the recipe, guys. and so we would just, like, kids, adults, everybody liked the waffles. Depending on the number of kids, sometimes we'd just, like, serve the kids first, and then the adults would have a leisurely dinner after the kids. But I guess that gets into the next chapter, Don't Be a Chill Host, like how we structured it. So we had that structure. We had this is the thing we provide, and then we even had structures within that where it's like, let's get the kids, the chaos happens first. We'll get that taken care of. We'll get them all happy and friendly. Like sometimes they don't play nicely together before they've eaten.
Yes.
So we'd get them all fed and happy, and then they'd go off and play, and the adults would have a chance to get to know each other. So that was kind of our tactic on how to get to know people when we first moved in. But so this next chapter is entitled Don't Be a Chill Host. And it's funny because she always sounds prickly in her headings, but she's not.
She's not. But it sort of sounds that way. I love her first headline there. Chill is selfishness disguised as kindness. And at first I was like, what? But it makes sense. When we let anything go, anything might go. And then we're not being kind to everyone, including ourselves.
Yeah. And there's leadership involved when
Absolutely.
you host something.
Even if you want to be chill and laid back, you still need to have some plans in your head, and you still need to structure things just a little bit. You still need to facilitate conversations between certain people, or make accommodations for other people, or whatever.
Yeah. And with this topic, I thought about birthday parties. When you're hosting kids' birthday parties, especially when they're younger, there has to be a lot of structure. Oh, yeah. You cannot be chill when you have a bunch of little kids around.
It's like Chuck E. Cheese. I tell everybody I'm allergic to Chuck E. Cheese. No offense, Chuck E. Cheese, but everywhere like Chuck E. Cheese, I'm allergic to it. It's just too much chaos.
Yeah,
it's just too much.
We told our kids when they were little, you have to have a special invitation.
That's right. Only for a special invitation. My kids
Sorry.
love Chuck E. Cheese,
Yeah.
or used to love Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah, it's like we also told them that the ice cream truck was a music truck.
Oh, very nice.
Nice music.
I digress. But yeah, so like kids' birthday parties, yeah.
Yeah.
Or even adult birthday parties, honestly.
She said that it creates a vacuum that other people can fill if you don't assert your leadership power. Because you do have leadership power as the host, which makes sense. And it's not that we're power mongers or anything like that. It's there's a vacuum and then somebody else is going to fill it. And it's not going to be what you want sometimes.
Right.
Maybe most of the
Yeah. In fact, I have one son, my middle child. His birthday was coming up. He was probably turning like 9 or something like that. He's like, Mom, for this birthday party, can we not have a theme, not have decorations, not have like games and stuff like that? I just want my friends to come over and we'll do what we want to do. And I was like,
Oh.
okay. And I'm like super nervous, but I underestimated this child because he is like a born host and a natural leader. And so he had in his mind a list of things he wanted to do with his friends without any adult interference. And he had all these things.
He was a leader. He was
a leader.
Yeah.
And he knew in his mind. So it could have been a disaster. Like, I was like, okay. Like, they could just be sitting around like,
what do you want to do?
Yeah.
What do you want to do?
I know, exactly. But no, he had endless lists of things that he wanted to do with his friends, and it was super fun. They were playing hide and seek. They were doing like all these things, and it ended up great. So
he still had a plan. You just didn't
he
know
had
about
a plan. Yeah,
He wanted to be the host.
Yeah,
exactly.
He just wanted that like torch of leadership to be from Mom to him.
Yeah, which
because
was
he was
really
ready
cool.
for it. He must have been so
Yeah, and I never planned a party for that kid again.
I love that.
Yeah, and still as a teenager, they're not usually officially parties, but he has people hanging. Right now, they're sewing. He and all the guys are sewing hats in the basement and selling them. So we have like a sweatshop in the basement. So anyway, so back to this. The next subhead is or the wonders of generous authority, and I liked that how it's like you're not trying to be bossy, because we've all had that, especially when we were younger. We'd go over to somebody's house and they'd be like, "No, I get to choose because you're
I'm
my
in
house."
charge.
And, yeah,
Who wants to be at a party like that?
I like how she said, people come into your kingdom wanting to be led. And I remember telling my husband that right after I read it, like, people want to come over into my kingdom and be led. So it's okay for me to say, okay, everybody, we're all going to share your favorite quotes now. Like what we did at the party.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, everybody gather up. I asked everybody to bring their favorite quote because I wanted something to like bring us all together. And so I'm like, okay, everybody come share your favorite quote. And it feels so awkward because a lot of people don't do that. But I really wanted to learn. And I think it was really cool to have everybody together.
I think we're always worried that if we do things a little different than they're always done, then we're going to stand out. You know, people still have the prerogative to say, I don't want to share a quote.
Right.
Did you have anybody do that?
No.
See, nobody does that.
No.
It's not anything. You're not going to ask them to do a handstand or something.
No, and we're
right?
not sharing embarrassing
Oh, that
stories.
would
Or
be fun.
embarrassing story.
So if you lead it.
Yeah. As long as somebody can hold me up. I don't know. I think people are ready to do something different, and even something they might be scared to do.
Yeah.
And
they're
they're
so
for it
But
too.
if you
It
give
was-
them the heads up,
Right.
for sure.
Yeah, and sometimes
I love
that
it.
might be a costume, or sometimes it might be, common ones are like favorite things.
Yes,
Like
favorite things
there's a
party or-
theme, so there's
yeah.
like set parameters of what you're gonna do, and you kind of have an expectation going in. One, probably our most successful one, and we keep meaning to repeat it, and we haven't done it yet, and it was so fun. It was, we had a story slam, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with The Moth. It's a podcast. I mean, it's live events, it's podcasts. We go to the live events. Anyway, so it's like live storytelling without notes. They have very set rules. You come and you put your name in a hat if you want to tell a story, and then you go up on stage, and it's fake. So
Sounds fun.
it's really fun. So we decided to have one at our house, and so we really had to prep people in advance.
Yeah.
So we sent out like clips from YouTube of
What it looked like.
The Moth,
Mhm.
of like the stories that people told us. So we picked our favorites, and so we sent links to those in our Evite. We said, you can come to listen, you can come to share a story. When you come, you write your name. If you have a story you want to share, we didn't have a theme. We just said like one of your favorite stories to tell. So people came prepared with their stories. It was great. It collected everybody's name in the hat. But then we strayed from our rules because to get things started, I was like, well, is there a volunteer that wants to go first? And so, yeah, there was a volunteer and he told the hilarious story and it was great. We still had this thing full, but then I was like, oh, well, I don't want people to feel obligated to tell stories. Well, obviously they had already volunteered by putting their name in. Mm-hmm. So stories kept coming and they were great. But, I could see some people almost shrinking. Like I know they had a story to tell. One of my friends said, come with notes and I could tell was nervous to tell it, but was ready. But she wasn't going to volunteer because,
she wanted her name.
She was a little bit, there were people who wanted their name to be drawn out. Mm-hmm. And it turned out, interestingly, that it started to be very male dominated. Like the men were the ones that were volunteering. Maybe it was because the first one was. Maybe it was because the women were just like, oh, I'll give them a chance. It was a very equal group of people. There wasn't any weirdness that way. But I think some of the women there were just being like, oh, well, other people want to go. I'll let them go. And they were kind of being considerate, but if we had stuck to our original rule, we would have gotten a much more diversity of people telling it. So that was a time when we broke our rule and we shouldn't have broken our rule, because it actually adds to the excitement and the thrill of it too.
Who's gonna be that?
To not know when you're gonna go and not like it's kind of part of the fun of it. And yeah, when we went in person and my husband told the story, like that was part of the like whole thrill of it. But anyway, so that was a good lesson to us to like follow your own rules and follow through and not to be a chill host. Being like, oh well, sure, we'll just let it happen organically. Yeah, that it didn't end up being
nothing organic. Hello,
but it's true.
You have to have a plan.
Yeah,
someone else will.
Yeah, yep,
it's true. But I just had a sense afterwards, like, oh, I think there were people who wanted to share that we didn't share. Yeah. And we didn't have time for everybody, but anyway, so we'll throw it again. We'll do that party again. And we'll invite both of you guys. And that was another one where it was just anybody we could think of we invited because it was fun to have a big crowd.
For an audience to watch.
Yeah, because
giving them permission not to do it, to tell a story, that would be scary. Knowing I could not do it too.
Yeah.
Was very
and knowing what the party's going to be also creates that exclusivity, because some people might be like, oh, that does not sound like fun, I will just stay home, and that's okay. But I think you're telling everybody what was going on definitely provided that the group was there, wanted to be there, and was excited to share or excited to hear.
Yeah, and we had like 40 people.
Wow.
It was super fun.
So fun.
Yeah, so we'll do it again. But it is interesting because sometimes you can get stage fright when you're the host.
Oh yeah.
And you can be like, okay, I had this plan. Is it stupid? Is it,
we second guess ourselves when we have a plan.
Yeah, or sometimes even like, but this conversation is going so well, I don't want to cut it short. But we did have this other cool thing planned. Sometimes you just do have to cut the things and maybe leave them wanting more. Maybe that's part of it.
Isn't that part of it though?
Yeah.
You get them if the guests are leaving wanting to stay longer, or you wanted them to stay longer. That's the whole right.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, along with RSVPs, I feel like ending times are really important.
I was thinking that today too.
I feel like, when I invite people, I initially didn't do that because I wanted people to feel welcome, to stay as long as they wanted. But when she was saying you want people to want more and to want to come back again, and you don't want people to have an awkward like, oh, do I leave now? So what I usually do is at the ending time, I start cleaning up, and if people are there, then I know she says not to do that, and a lot of people say not to do that, but the ending time is clear on the invitation. At 9 o'clock, I'm going to start cleaning up. And some people do stay and help clean up, and we get to chatter, but other people, that gives them permission to leave.
You want to just sit here and help me clean up, and we're still chatting,
right?
And I'm still happy, and I didn't go leave to get my pajamas yet, or whatever. Right. People know they're still welcome if that's what you want.
Yeah, but then again, sometimes when it's your best friend and their family, you're like, hey, come help me with the dishes. And you can say that too.
Yeah.
You know, and you like, let's chat while we do the dishes, you know? And so, or with family or with, you know, like, so yeah, there's
flexibility.
Yeah, totally.
But I like the ending time too.
I mean, people want to know when
They do want to know.
you want to go home. And when I go to people's houses and I don't know what time they want us to leave, I am trying now, especially after reading this book, to make it a point. Hey, so what time would be a good time for us to head out? Right when we come in, so that I know when to tell my kids.
Do you have time constraints?
Yes, time constraints. Yeah. That's a great way to say it. Like, because I don't want them to be feeling like, oh no, they need to leave. We need to get our kids to bed, but we don't want to make them feel awkward. I would rather them feel like they can say that not awkwardly.
Back to what I was talking about with my husband and I hosting youth events at our house about protecting your guests. It's also protecting us. I collect cell phones when they walk in.
I was going to bring that up next.
If they didn't need them, like a couple times ago, they needed their cell phones for something.
Okay, for the activity.
We were doing. But most of the time, we want them to engage with each other and us. And so I just collected. Everybody, just give me your phone. And you know what? They're more compliant than you might imagine because everybody else is doing it, and it's just one of the rules of our gathering, right? We're just I'm not going to be on my phone, so don't be on your phone.
Yeah.
I do that when I'm teaching in a church setting too sometimes, depending, of course, on if they need it or not. But I think that's a great way to protect your guests because there's nothing worse than you're sitting here talking and the other person is just, it's so demoralizing to know that their phone is more important than talking to me or whatever, right? So
well, it's been a problem for my kids. Like they'll have a group of friends over, and they'll be in the basement hanging out, and I've had one come up like mid party and be like, "Mom, can you come down with the cell phone basket? Like everybody's on their phone, and I don't want to be the one." So
don't be the bad guy.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Mom can do that.
Mom can be the bad guy.
Yeah,
yeah, I love that.
And but I thought that was very like aware of him. Like this is getting in the way. And, but I've had other ones that have taken it upon themselves to like, here's the cell phone basket. Then there were like some issues with friends sneaking them out and stuff like that. Sometimes
there's always something.
But you know what? Then they know that maybe that's not somebody we invite again. To, you know, right. Which is sad, but
that's true.
Also, you know, like they want to be here? Maybe not.
No, they didn't want to be fully present.
Yeah, and yeah. So it's a tough dynamic.
It is.
The phones are really
but
tough.
Protecting our guests. I think that idea of, you know, we're always watching to see how can we bring that quiet person over there that doesn't know anybody. It's just a host skill that everybody needs to learn.
Yeah, and it's that I did want to touch on that briefly, just about how to teach our kids some of these hosting skills. And one thing I do with my kids is, so I have them. I put my kids in charge of their social lives pretty early, and like let them invite people. We just have like basically open Friday nights. Our house is just open for whoever wants to have a party. If there's two kids that want to have people or party loosely, but invite whoever over. Yeah. And sometimes it's two, and we're like, okay, we kind of set rules like okay, you guys hang out on the main floor, you guys hang out on in the basement. Sometimes they're more compatible than others, and they want to do it together. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they want them separate because there's age gaps and annoying 8-year-olds, you know, whatever. You know, I love 8-year-olds, but you know, like they're gonna annoy the teenagers. Mm-hmm. So, or you know, outside, or you know, we have different places they can be. But so you know, we talk it through. Like, what are you gonna do? If you're inviting a bunch of people over, kind of have somewhat of a plan, some activities that you can do. And they've seen what happens when sometimes they don't. And it's like that whole, what do you want to do thing. And they've been to other people's houses where all they do is like sit and watch TV because nobody can think of something to do or wants to step on people's toes. So I didn't know the words for it about being a chill host, but I'm like, you have a plan for the people coming over. That doesn't mean that it has to go your way. If they think of great ideas, you can do them, but at least you have suggestions, because you don't want your host, like you should be able to rely on the host. It's their house. They know what they have. Mm-hmm. They know what they're allowed to do. The host really should be in charge of giving the options.
Right. And it's a multiple choice test and not a short answer, make up whatever you want. Like they don't know what the options are. And
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, that's not protecting your guests. So afterwards, we'll say, okay, what went well,
Right.
what didn't go well, what would you do differently next time?
Right.
And not every time, but
Enough that they're
especially at
starting to
first
catch
when they're young
Yeah.
and hosting,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and like, yeah, that was too many people, or that
Right.
was, you know, or yeah, maybe next time I want it to just be the guys and not the girls, and you know, like just talk it through and talk about different purposes for different parties. But yeah, just talking through those things and giving them kind of a primer on like, here are your responsibilities as a host. Make sure people aren't hungry. Make sure people, you know, like, and yes, you can actually ask your guests to help you clean up.
Right.
Like if you know it's almost the end when parents are picking up, being able to be like, okay, it's 10 minutes till the end. If everybody helps you clean up, but my kids know that if they want to keep having people over, they have to do the cleanup too. And so not many of them have clued into like getting their friends to help very well, but we're working on that one. That you guys
I feel like sometimes it's challenging to be a host because I have 5 kids too. Mine are on the younger side though. My oldest is going to be 12 this year, and then I've got a 1-year-old who loves to get into things. But it's challenging to get everything ready in time, and so but the more that I host, the more I'm like, it's never all completely ready on time. And one of my friends said that she always turns on a show for her kids 20 minutes before the guests get there, because you can clean up most things in 20 minutes. And so 20 minutes before my kids know, they get a little 20-minute show, but as soon as the friends get here, it is off. And I get to panic clean and run around and pick up the Tupperware in the living room and like finish putting things on the table and stuff. And that 20 minutes, you can get a lot done in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, when there's time crunch.
Right.
Yeah. And I also learned that, you know, especially when we were doing Sunday dinner every week, it's like sometimes my house isn't going to be perfect. And honestly, sometimes that is just great for guests to see.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I think
It really
that
is.
makes people feel like family a little bit if they know that
Yes.
you're not panicking and
Yes, we live here.
I have a friend, Yolanda, back many years ago. She said, Angela, if you wait for your house to be perfect or your plan to be perfect or anything to be perfect, you're never going to have people
Yeah.
over.
No.
You're never going to make these memories. And she's a great host.
Yeah.
And
She told me that a long
she
time
has
ago.
something on the
Who
floor.
cares?
Yeah.
I don't care whether you vacuumed or not. I really don't.
And I figured, like, when I was in that stage with all the young moms, I was like, I called it my self-esteem project for other people.
Oh.
And I was like, either they come into my house and they think I'm a much better housekeeper than she is, or they come into my house and they're like, oh, we're the same, you know, or everybody's messy.
Very rarely. Do you think there's really not that many people out there that come in and look for a problem in your
No,
house?
no.
Yeah.
I mean,
They want to be with you.
they want to be with you. That's why they came,
Yeah.
right?
They don't want to see your baseboards.
Trust your friends.
Yeah, I'm
Right.
still sometimes bad at like apologizing. You know,
Same,
I try to
same,
stop
same.
apologizing.
Yeah.
But like, oh, you know, making
It
excuses.
is what it is.
Yeah, yeah. My mom would always just say, "Come in if you can get in." That was her thing. That was her welcome to our house, and she had lots of great close friends that would just.
Well, I think different people come up with catchphrases, which can also be kind of a comfort to us when we're hosting. Like my friend used to say, "Come on in, we definitely live here." And so yes, there's things on the floor, and like this is not a show home. Or what I would often say is, "Hey, I'm so glad you're here. Please know that we were just too excited for you to get here to have everything cleaned up." And so,
I love that.
then people can know that it's the emphasis on them and not on my toddler toys all over the floor and the Cheerios.
You know, when people are first and not the.
I know it keeps coming up.
It does. People first.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think one way we can also help make the people first is when you are trying to meet the needs of your kids and your guests at the same time. It's such a conundrum for me because they're all people. Who am I supposed to help? My kids or my guests? Or like, can my kids wait? And I feel like one way that has helped me with that is I don't just invite one family when we do for dinner. And you guys are more experienced than me, so you've probably done this, but it was just eye-opening to me when we started having 2 families over, or even 3 was like the magical number, because then they can talk while I'm meeting a little kid need. And it seems like it's more work, but it's actually not, because everybody's happy to bring something and people can talk, and there's less focus on me having perfect conversation skills because there's multiple people to bounce that ball around. And
That is great.
that
advice.
was like, I thought I couldn't do it until my kids were older, but it's easier. It's so much
I
easier.
love that. That's a great tip too.
That is a great tip.
Don't think you can't host until things are just right.
Right.
They don't need to be just right.
Right.
Yeah. In fact, people like to see that other people are human.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I do.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes. So that discussion kind of launches us into chapter 4, which is our last chapter to cover today. Creating a temporary alternative world. You get to be this non-chill host in your kingdom. So I know both of you had some thoughts about this temporary alternative world.
Well, I just thought about in this alternative world, like how much the location plays into what world you're creating, and how different locations play into how a party vibes and how gathering doesn't. And I mean, I remember throwing a baby shower, and we had a tiny little apartment, tiny little family room, and the girl that I was throwing it for asked if she could invite 25 people, and I was like, I can't host that, but we could do it at the church building that's like 2 blocks over. So I thought that would be great, but it turns out that room was too big for 25 people.
Yeah.
And so then people weren't bumping into each other. Conversations were more awkward. It was just, it was too big. Then a couple years later, I had a baby shower, and also 25 people, but I want to be at my house. And we were packed. I mean, everybody was like bumping into each other and sitting on the ground.
How fun though.
But it was the perfect thing for her. She was so
Yeah.
excited that she could just bump into all the people she knew, and people could go, "Oh my gosh, I haven't seen your shirt. It's so cute," because they were so close. And so it ended up being really, really lively.
Cozy.
And we wouldn't have had that had we been at a bigger location.
Mhm.
So it matched kind of what we were going for. Had she been more introverted, maybe that vibe wouldn't have been for her. But it ended up matching the party matched the location really well.
Love that.
Yeah, and that's a good reminder to me. We had lots of baby showers when my husband was in his residency, because that was kind of the stage of life, and there were like baby showers every other week or something. You know, there were lots of baby showers, and different people would trade off hosting, but it was often some of the same people who were in the programs, or and that we knew. You know, we just had a tight-knit community where we were supporting each other during this crazy time in our lives.
Yeah.
And I had to learn a lesson, like, different people were hosting. So you could see how other people were doing it. You could compare how other people were doing it. And some people were like really artsy and crafts. And like there was one where there was a plywood castle in the front yard. For decorations, and like beautiful cookies and handmade keychains as to take away. And then I was already set to host one soon, and that was not my skill set. I'm a simple hoster, so I was very intimidated, and also like maybe judgmental, like, oh, who, these fancy people showing off their
skills.
But it was really just their creative outlet. Like they had a bunch of babies too, and they're like, oh, how fun, I get to throw a fun party. Like, and now I can see that, but I felt intimidated and like comparative. Yeah. And so then I'm like, well, I have to do it my way. I can't put on a party like that. I don't decorate, guys. I still don't decorate. And so I was like, okay, we're just going to go totally different at my house, and we're going to do, my kingdom is going to be a kingdom of books. And I had everybody bring their favorite children's book to share, and then the gifts were children's books, because it was like a third baby or something like that. They didn't need all the stuff. They just, but it was just a fun. So that was the decorations too. We just decorated with everybody's books displayed around the room, and it was great, and everybody loved it. People aren't coming to your
to judge you
party or your event to judge. They just want to come to your kingdom. They don't want you to recreate somebody else's kingdom. And so like have confidence in your own skill set. I'm really knowledgeable about kids' books, and I had a fun party about kids' books, and it was great. And it would have been a disaster if I had tried to pull off this grandiose, beautiful, decorated thing.
And you wouldn't have been a chill host. You would have been really anxious about that.
Yeah.
We want to be in the middle. We want to be anxious. You don't want to be chill. You want to be in the middle.
And we changed too throughout the years. I know I've definitely changed the way I do things. For example, when my oldest was 3 years old, she was turning 3. I just wanted to throw her the most beautiful princess party ever. We lived in an apartment. We made a castle outside the front of
See?
When you say castle, I was like, oh. I had a
No
friend.
judgment.
I had a friend after the party go, Angela, what were you thinking? And I had to think for a minute. I'm like, but I had so much fun. And my daughter had so much fun. Now, granted, I didn't do it for all my kids that same way. We even had one of our friends dress up as a knight. And he went and dubbed them all, and like they all got their little invitation, weeks before. It's set the stage for this alternate reality that she says, design it as a world that will only exist once. But you're not going to get to go be a princess or a prince in a kingdom very often. Back to our kingdom analogy here. And it was so much fun. My husband made the cake. It looked like a castle, because that's what he likes to do, and decorate the front door. And then our friend, who didn't have kids yet but wanted to be a part of this, he and his wife dressed up as a princess and a prince, went and delivered all the invitations personally. It was so much fun. And we did so many fun activities. But granted, I'm not going to do that again for all of my kids. I mean, I have 5 kids and they have birthdays every year. It's okay to do things once and be good with it. I'm not going to throw a party like that again for, Ben turns 17 in a couple weeks.
Oh, I think you should. I think it needs to be a
princess party. So we just do different things, and it's okay to.
I'll be the princess delivery.
It's okay to create an alternate reality world if you want to. When my kids were little, I had daughters first. I went all out, and was so much fun.
Yeah,
and I wasn't doing it to compare to other people and other moms if they felt threatened. Really sorry.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to do that at all. But now my boys, and they're almost all gone now, we just did things completely different.
Yeah.
And it is okay. Because they also have different wants. My girls wanted a production. All 3 of them. My boys did not want a production. And that's okay.
Yeah, like my son was like, don't plan anything, Mom.
Exactly.
Like, oh, yeah.
Exactly. So I think it's okay that things change, and don't judge yourself about going to somebody else's party that looks completely different.
Yeah, just be glad that your kids get that
they
opportunity.
Like,
or
exactly.
Yeah.
Because some of the best gatherings are ones that the host knows why we're here, loves each person there, and connects us all together. And we have this alternate reality, this moment in time when we're never going to be just us again in this space. And I think it's a beautiful thing, just to help create a moment that could become a memory or could be what that person needed, and while still honoring our own needs. But that's a skill, and it's a talent, it's an art, but we can all get better.
Oh, yeah, strengthen that muscle.
Yeah.
Post more.
Lifted.
Yeah. Yeah. That is great.
Great.
That is such a great way to end our discussion. I appreciate you both for taking the time to read, and all of you. I hope some of you have read it too, but if not,
it's a quick read.
Yeah,
it really is a quick and fun read. Lots of great ideas.
Yeah, and we will wrap it up in our next month on the second week. I should we'll wrap it up next month with the last few chapters of the book. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for listening to or watching the Family Lab podcast. If you enjoyed these episodes about the art of gathering, you may also enjoy some other episodes about gathering people, making friends, starting with one about the village I grew up in, how she builds a village. There's also a great episode about a woman named Christina Acosta, who founded a community for Black women of faith, and kind of a 2-episode series called How She Makes Friends and How She Spends Time with Friends, which includes that story about my friend Jenica and the lonely luau. Special thanks to my assistant producer, Bailey Blake, who helps me with video editing, brilliant ideas, and just general moral support. And as always, a special thank you to my mother, Susan Singley, for recording my theme music. She used to play this song all the time when I was growing up, and to me, it's the soundtrack of motherhood.